Let me tell you a story that begins with a moment most people would walk past without even noticing. A small girl, no older than 7, sitting alone on a school bench with her arms wrapped tightly around her backpack, her face pale, scared, and holding back tears. Her name was Emily Stanton, daughter of the richest man in the entire city. But in that moment, she didn't look privileged. She didn't look powerful. She looked lost. And everyone, absolutely everyone, walked right past her. Why? Because people feared her last name. Feared her father. Feared the consequences of getting involved with the billionaire's family. Everyone, except one man. A single dad named Mark Turner, holding his paint-splattered lunchbox and waiting for his own daughter after school, noticed her. And what he did next changed everything, not only for Emily, not only for himself, but for the entire community. The rumors about the Stanton family were endless. People said the billionaire, Richard Stanton, had fired entire teams for small mistakes. They said he didn't tolerate anyone touching or talking to his daughter without authorization. So when teachers saw Emily sitting alone after school, they quietly looked away. When parents noticed her, they gently tugged their children to the opposite side. But Mark wasn't like most people. He was a construction worker, raising his daughter Lily alone after losing his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. Money was tight, but love wasn't. Mark had a soft heart, maybe too soft, as some people said. On that afternoon, while waiting for Lily's class to be dismissed, his eyes kept drifting back to the lonely girl on the bench. The way she trembled, the way she stared at the ground, it didn't look like a kid throwing a tantrum. It looked like a kid who needed help. So he walked over. "Hey," he said gently, kneeling beside her, "are you okay?" Her eyes widened. No one had spoken to her since morning. She shook her head slowly. "Do you need someone to call your dad?" Mark asked. That's when he saw it, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "My dad's busy," she whispered. He forgot. Forgot. Not working late. Not stuck in traffic. He forgot. And in that moment, Mark felt something break inside him. Not pity. Not anger. Just empathy. He knew what it was like to feel forgotten. He knew what it was like to need someone who wasn't there. Before Mark could say another word, he heard a sharp voice behind him. "Sir, please step away from Miss Stanton." It was the head of school security. A tall man with a stiff suit and even stiffer expression. Mark stood, confused. "I was just checking if she's okay. She's alone. That is not your responsibility. And you are not allowed to interact with her without explicit permission." Emily looked down again, shrinking in on herself. Mark clenched his jaw. She wasn't a fragile museum artifact. She was a child who looked like she might break into tears at any moment. "But she needs someone," Mark said firmly. "She's scared." "That's enough," the guard warned. "Mr. Stanton will handle it." Mark wanted to argue, but Lily came running out of class at that moment, hugging her dad's waist. He left with her, but the image of Emily alone on that bench followed him home. The very next week, something happened that the whole school would whisper about for months. It was raining. Hard. A sudden storm that came out of nowhere. Parents rushed to pick up their children early. Kids huddled under umbrellas. And there she was again. Emily. Standing outside, soaking wet, clutching her little unicorn backpack. Her driver hadn't shown up. Her father didn't answer calls. And security, for reasons that made no sense, remained fixed at the gate, saying they were waiting for protocol. That's when Mark's truck pulled up. He didn't hesitate. He didn't care about consequences. He didn't care about the billionaire's reputation. He didn't care about the guard shouting, "Sir, you can't." He threw his jacket around Emily's shoulders and carried her inside the school lobby. Lily followed behind with her small umbrella, trying her best to keep the rain off the girl's face. Emily sobbed quietly, her body trembling. "Nobody ever helps me," she whispered into Mark's chest. "Nobody wants to." Mark held her tighter. "You're not nobody," he murmured. "You're just a kid, and kids shouldn't be alone." 20 minutes later, the front doors burst open. A tall man in an expensive suit stormed in, his face cold and intimidating. Richard Stanton. Everyone froze. Teachers, staff, parents, they all stood silently as he approached Mark. "Are you the man who touched my daughter?" His voice boomed. Mark didn't waver. Emily was still clinging to him. "Yes," Mark said calmly. "She was alone in a storm. What was I supposed to do, leave her out there? For a moment, the billionaire looked ready to explode. But then, he looked at Emily. Her wet hair stuck to her face. Her red eyes were swollen from crying. She looked terrified, but not of Mark. Of him. Richard's expression cracked, just for a second. Emily, he said softly. What happened? Emily didn't meet his eyes. You forgot me again, she whispered. The entire room seemed to stop breathing. And something in that moment, something fragile and buried, finally broke open inside the billionaire. He knelt down slowly. He looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. His lips trembled. I'm sorry, he said. She didn't respond. She just buried her face into Mark's chest again, choosing the arms that had protected her when no one else dared to. Richard looked at Mark with a mix of shame and gratitude. What's your name? He asked quietly. Mark Turner. You helped her, Richard said. When everyone else was too afraid. Mark shrugged slightly. She needed someone. That's all. Over the next week, an unexpected friendship began. Richard asked Mark for advice, not about business, not about money, but about something far more valuable. How do I be a good father? At first, Mark thought it was ridiculous. Why would a billionaire ask a construction worker about parenting? Richard explained. I built everything in my life, except a relationship with my daughter. And now I don't know how. Mark didn't sugarcoat it. Start by showing up, he said. She doesn't need more things. She needs you. So Richard showed up. He came to school pickups. He attended parent-teacher meetings. He joined Mark and Lily at the park just to watch Emily finally play like a normal kid. It was awkward at first, watching a billionaire sit on a public bench, holding juice boxes with both hands like they were foreign objects. But Emily laughed. For the first time in years, she laughed freely. And Mark realized something. Being a dad wasn't about money. It was about presence. Months passed, and the bond between the two families grew stronger. One afternoon, at the school fair, Emily was decorating cupcakes with Lily when she suddenly shouted, "Daddy, look!" She ran across the field, waving her frosting-covered hands, and wrapped her arms around Richard's neck. He froze, startled, but slowly hugged her back, with tears forming in his eyes. That was the moment he'd been waiting for. The moment he feared he'd never earn. And he had Mark to thank. Later that evening, Richard pulled Mark aside. You changed my daughter's life, he said. You changed my life. Mark shook his head. She just needed someone to see her. Richard smiled. A lot of people saw her. You were the only one brave enough to care. And in a voice quieter than the wind, he added, I owe you more than I can ever repay. But Mark didn't need repayment. He had already received his reward. Because a little girl who once trembled alone on a bench, now ran around laughing freely with his own daughter. And that was enough. The story of Mark and Emily spread through the community. People stopped being afraid of names and titles. They started looking at the child behind the wealthy family, and the heart behind the ordinary worker. Because of one man's courage to step forward when everyone else stepped back. A child found safety. A father found redemption. And a community learned that kindness matters more than status. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Acts of Heart for more inspiring stories that celebrate kindness, love, and humanity. Moral: never underestimate the power of one small act of courage. It can change a life forever.